it's not taxed until they choose to do something like, say, sell stock. So they can accrue vast wealth, which is really like the equivalent of income for us, and not pay taxes on it. And so you mentioned in some years, billionaires have managed to pay nothing in federal income tax. Jeff Bezos paid no income taxes twice in 2007 and 2011. Elon Musk paid nothing in 2018. And in recent years, billionaire investors George Soros and Phil Icahn and Michael Bloomberg have all paid nothing in income taxes in some years. And so the main finding we were able to produce is that if you kind of take the entire group of the top 25 richest people in America and look at their wealth growth over a 5-year period and look at how much they paid in taxes, you get that they grew their wealth by $400 billion over the 5 years from 2014 to 2018 and paid only a fraction of it, 3.4% in federal taxes during that time. And for comparison, the average for a typical American who takes home a wage pays about 14% on their income taxes in those years.
Yeah, the disparity in all that is huge. And, obviously the big question comes, how do they get to do that? One of the couple of things that I see is a common theme, obviously, and you mentioned it, right? The income. You have to report income to be able to be taxed on it. So a lot of times what these do is, you report losses on investments or you borrow a lot of money. You don't have to pay income taxes on that stuff because it's not technically income.
That's right. I mean, a good example in terms of not paying income would be someone like Warren Buffett. Berkshire Hathaway sort of famously doesn't pay dividends, and so as the stock price grows, dividends aren't paid out. So Warren Buffett's not registering, income for tax purposes on it, and so he has a very low rate when you consider how much he's paid in taxes compared to how much his wealth's grown in recent years, which is tens of billions of dollars.
Going back to the other notion of borrowing large sums of money, we see a lot of these big companies, CEOs and everything. A lot of times they're saying, "Hey, well, I'm only going to take $1 in my salary for this year," and to a lot of people, hearing that saying, "Oh, wow, they're not cashing in all sorts of amounts of money," but it just doesn't really work out that way. They're not taking that income, so they're not paying the taxes on that stuff, but they keep growing their wealth in other ways.
That's exactly right. And, like with other assets, you can borrow against wealth, right? So in some sense, folks who are in the highest wealth stratum, they can borrow against things like shares of stock, which several of the folks in the top 25 did in the past decade or two. So, and you sometimes see that come out actually in disclosures from the SEC. And so from that, we know that Elon Musk, for example, borrowed tens of billions of dollars or pledged tens of billions of dollars of Tesla stock in order to borrow money. So even though it may not look like income, there's still a way to access that value.
In your findings and all of this, you guys were able to access a lot of IRS information, kind of raw information, and you were comparing that to other data that we have, data from Forbes about how a lot of these people grew their wealth, and you came up with a new number, something that you guys were calling a true tax rate. Basically, they're increasing their wealth so much, but they only paid this amount in taxes. And when you look at that number, I mean, that really kind of paints a picture of how much they're actually paying compared to all the money that they're making. Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, so we did two stories came out today. One was looking at the sort of traditional rates that the IRS might publish, income or taxes divided by income, basically, to get your tax rate. Interestingly, the ultra wealthy pay a relatively low rate as far as that's concerned as well, because most of their income is in forms of income that are taxed at a lower rate, like capital gains. But it's not capturing the whole picture, because you really have to take a look at how much they're able to really bring in and add to their buying power, to their influence in society, things like that are influenced by your wealth. And when you take that picture, when you look at the sort of unrealized gains as well as sort of traditional income, you see that it's a really small fraction for them as a group in terms of what they pay in federal income taxes, and for some individuals it's incredibly small.
Walk us through some of those names, because you mentioned Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk. Give us a few numbers, if you can, with how much they're really paying when you work it out this way.
Yeah, so you go back to 2006 and you look at how much Jeff Bezos, for instance, how much his wealth has gone up. It went up something on the order of, $130 billion. And in that time, he paid, I think 1.4 billion in taxes, and it sounds like a lot, but when you sort of divide that by 130 billion, it's only about 1% that he's paying on his wealth growth. So it can be a strikingly low figure. It's actually even lower if you look at Warren Buffett, who takes very low income.
Yeah, and Warren Buffett's been one of those proponents for higher taxes on the wealthy. I think you had a great number in here, of these 25 top earners that you guys were able to look at, their worth rose a collective $401 billion. This was from 2014 to 2018. They paid a total of $13.6 billion. A lot of money. But when you put it all together, it's really only 3.4% of that amount, of the amount that their wealth grew. So very little in comparison there. I wanted to work in some of the discussion around taxes when it comes to politics and all that, because we've been hearing that from the Biden administration wanting to raise taxes on wealthier Americans, also on corporations that are making billions of dollars. We've been hearing a lot about that. How does that work into this conversation?
Mm-hmm. Well, for decades, the conversation about taxes has been kind of dominated by marginal tax rates, right? But those rates are only going to capture what happens when people do take income, and so some folks who are in the top of the wealth distribution, these really wealthy billionaires, they'll be affected to some degree by that, but it's not going to change much of the picture when we talk about how much they're paying in taxes versus their wealth growth. Some economists do think many economists think that the corporate taxes are ultimately paid by individual people, and if you distribute that, most of that falls onto the shareholders. So insofar as there's moves on the corporate tax rate, that would be more likely to be sort of raising revenue, at least indirectly, off of this group.
You made mention in the article as well about taxes being paid after somebody passes away, and how even then a lot of people's estates are able to skirt paying a lot of the taxes and passing on that wealth to their heirs and all of that stuff. And obviously there's all sorts of loopholes all over the place, but that just kind of figures into all of this. Even in death, people escape paying a lot of these taxes.
Yeah, there's an entire industry around wealth management, and a lot of that is geared towards figuring out how to sort of minimize tax burden, right? And so there are complicated trusts that you can set up if you are interested in trying to move a portion of your estate without having it end up being taxed at the estate tax level when you pass on. And a lot of these sorts of trusts are only accessible to people who are in the top stratum, which is also who's affected by the estate tax, of course.
Jeff Ernsthausen, Senior Data Reporter at ProPublica, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on Kfi Am 640. When we come back, we'll tell you how the pandemic has accelerated the rise of virtual food brands and how chicken wings figure into that equation.
Neil Saavedra here. About 3 years ago, my wife and I called American Vision Windows. They installed gorgeous French doors for us, changed the flow of our home, added architectural appeal. The next project they're doing are kitchen windows. We can't wait. Their work is meticulous. It's outstanding. I recommended them to my brother, Craig, and now he and his family have a lovely window-encased patio, added 150 sunny square feet to their home. We all know Bill and Kathleen's story. They had a horrible experience replacing their own windows. They started their own company. Fast forward 20 years later, they continue to beautify homes like mine with personal care, complete professionalism, and attention. CSLB number 778326. Give you and your home the gift of light, warmth, and beauty. Trust the window company my family trusts. American Vision Windows. You'll see the difference. Call American Vision Windows today for that free estimate, 888-226-9908. That's 888-226-9908. Or for specials, visit AmericanVisionWindows.com.
Thinking of buying a house and want a really low interest rate? Owning has a special for home purchases. where owning pays all your closing costs, and the rate in APR is an unheard of 1.875% for a 15-year fixed mortgage with 20% down. This is the craziest low rate for a mortgage with no closing costs that owning has ever done. 1.875% rate in APR. Heck, we're almost paying you to live in a new house. Call 833-2-OWNING or go to owning.com to see if you qualify for this crazy low 1.875% rate. That's a fixed rate loan at 1.875% with no closing costs. Call 833-2-OWNING now because 1.875 could go away at any time.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Subject to credit approval. Offer assumes the use of lender's choice escrow and title services. Call 823-858-0066 for terms and conditions.
That's 833-2-OWNING or owning.com. 833-2-OWNING or owning.com.
Get sizzling solar savings now with Semper Solaris, your local veteran-owned solar and battery storage contractor. Being veteran-owned matters. Here's veteran, founder, and owner Kelly Shawhan.
In the military, when you give your word, it just is your word. Work hard and keep your word. That's what we do every single day. Everybody did exactly what they said they were going to do, and that really impressed me. I've heard about Semper Solaris and found out that they were veterans, so I knew they were going to do the job right.
Declare your energy independence. Choose solar panels made in America. We get the job done right with esprit de corps and honor. Add Tesla Powerwall and prepare for blackouts. Grab the federal 26% solar and battery tax credit. No interest or payments until 2022. Call 877-211-5591. 877-211-5591. Or visit sempersolaris.com.
26% federal tax credit based on eligibility. Consult your tax advisor. Cannot be combined with any other offers on approved credit. New customers only. Some restrictions apply. Expires 6/30/2021. CSLB number 978152.
In 2020, our world went virtual. In 2021, it's back to real life. Experiencing the music you love in person and witnessing live performances you'll never forget. The superstars you've been waiting more than a year to see have never been more excited to perform for you. This September, our 2021 iHeartRadio Music Festival is coming back to Las Vegas. Be here as the lineup is unveiled Wednesday at 5 a.m.
Portions of the following program will be recorded. Our workforce that is not being helped at all by this economy. This has nothing to do with the White House, by the way. This is simply the way it's rolling. So, you expected me to say, aha, Trump! Nope.
Bill Handel.
This has nothing to do with the president.
Mornings from 6 to 10 on KFI.
Now, this segment is rated PG-13, just so you know.
It's a little bit risque. Here's what I tell people. If you have kids in the car, turn up the volume.
Bill Handel. Mornings from 6 to 10 on KFI. I know the weight of the world seems to rest on your shoulders, and sometimes life seems like it's filled only with confusion and chaos. But I assure you, I have a plan for you.
The Jesus Christ Show. This morning at 6 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640, heard everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. Finally, for this week, virtual brands are taking over your favorite food delivery apps. The pandemic has transformed the food industry, and in a time when many restaurants were closing, food brands have proliferated. Big chains and even mom-and-pop restaurants are expanding the brands housed in their kitchens and offering burgers, pizza, and especially chicken wings, all coming from the same kitchen, just under different names. For more on the rise of virtual brands and how to spot them, make sure to keep an eye out for all those chicken wing spots. We'll speak to Josh Jezza, investigations editor at The Verge.
So a ghost kitchen, which is sort of the better known concept, is basically a restaurant that only does delivery. And so it's kind of like a commissary kitchen, and you might have a couple of different restaurants working out of it. And the idea is that they'll be more efficient, have lower overhead, and be able to operate in this very tight environment of food delivery. A virtual brand is related, but it can be in a traditional restaurant. So you might remember last year, Chuck E. Cheese launched a brand called Pascali's Pizza and Wings. It was not clear at the time that was Chuck E. Cheese, but people were ordering from it, discovering it was actually Chuck E. Cheese. And so that Pascali's was an example of a virtual brand, something that a brick and mortar restaurant puts up on delivery apps in order to get new customers.
Tell me a little bit about Ty Brown and a restaurant called The Bergen, because you focus on him a lot in your article about how he expanded through all these virtual brands. I mean, he started off as one restaurant, But when all was said and done, he kept adding so many other brands to his thing. I mean, he was running, I don't know, 11 restaurants, maybe more, out of just the one.
Ty launched his restaurant sort of just before the pandemic and got approached pretty quickly by one of these virtual brand companies. In his case, I think the first one was Future Foods. And so they offer restaurant owners a menu of brands to choose from. And, it sounded like a great deal. He's already for the takeout spot is making burgers and wings. Future Foods says, we have these other burgers and wings brands. We'll run them. When an order comes through, you just fill the order, you get a cut of the revenue. So he did it, and, it worked well, sort of helped him get on his feet in the restaurant business. And then he kept adding more and more. Sort of these other companies launched. They started recruiting more aggressively. And so when we last spoke, he was running a dozen or so brands out of this one restaurant, opening other restaurants that he was going to open with also a dozen brands. And he's a big fan of the concept. It's instant sales for him. He's been quite happy with it.
Yeah, so you had a list of them, and I just need to run them down so people kind of understand how many different concepts you can run out of the one kitchen. So he had Chef Burger, Burger Mansion, Hey Burger, Mr. Beast Burger, and then wings. He had Chicks, Wild Wild Wings, Crispy Wings, Killer Wings, Fire Belly Wings. The list goes on. And that's also part of the magic, I guess you can say, about these virtual brands is a lot of it has to do with search optimization. You go onto an app and you're searching for product type, not necessarily product name. So you're looking for burgers, you're looking for wings, you're looking for pizza. And then, whatever else, the menu and everything kind of entices you to pick one at that point. So that's also one of the things that's really key to a lot of these virtual brands is the names of these brands are pretty, I guess, familiar enough to know what you're getting, but generic enough just to show up on the search engine.
The optimization is a big part of it. If you think about a restaurant like Denny's or Applebee's, one of these big chains that have started getting into it, they have wings on the menu, but you don't go to them for wings necessarily. So they'll launch something cosmic wings or neighborhood wings, and now they're showing up when people search for wings on the delivery apps. And so, so Ty's restaurants, I actually found him because I was just scanning Grubhub and saw one of those wing businesses. After you've been reading about these businesses for a while, they all start to sound the same. And so I think it was a Wing Dynasty that popped up. That seems like it's probably a virtual brand, and searched the address and came up with all these others that he was operating out of that location.
Why I find these stories so interesting is on multiple levels, really. So as a restaurateur, business owners, these are opportunities for them to obviously make more money, get names out there, and keep afloat, especially during a time like the pandemic. On the consumer side, we're looking for things to eat. We're looking for fast delivery. You don't know what you're getting sometimes. You don't know who you're actually ordering from. You see a name, you see a product you want, and you're going for it. So one of the truest tells of all of this, as you kind of mentioned, were wings. Wings are experiencing this kind of gold rush moment right now where it's so easy to do. Everybody's doing it, and you're going to see a lot of these things popping up on your delivery apps.
That's right. Yeah, wings. A lot of restaurants made wings already. If they didn't, they're pretty easy to spin up. And so kind of independently, early in the pandemic, a lot of restaurants said, we need extra revenue. The kitchen's sitting idle. We'll launch a wings brand. And then you have the large franchises that got on board. And then you have these branding companies that come along and say, we have 10 different virtual wings brands that you can put up and try to get some of that wings traffic. And so wing sales have really been through the roof. It's been kind of a bright spot for the industry. One of the stats I heard from an analyst was that, restaurant visits declined by about 11% the period roughly spanning the pandemic. Wing sales went up 10%. Prices have gone up, wings orders have gone up, everything has gone up, partly because all of these restaurants have launched wing brands.
Yeah, and they travel well. Nobody really corners the market on wings per se. A sauce here could be the same as a sauce anywhere else, and so that's why a lot of restaurants are gravitating towards that. I did want to mention the other side of things. Some restaurants and restaurateurs don't like this trend for a number of reasons. One, the fees associated with apps can get pretty high sometimes, so they're losing some money there. The other part of this, as you mentioned, there's these virtual brand kind of companies that are pitching out these companies to restaurants and things like that. You know, there's some in the industry that are worried that these Uber Eats, DoorDash, which have these kind of arms of their business coordinating these types of things, you know, might start opening up their own kitchens and their own restaurants and kind of, taking out the mom and pop shops and regular restaurateurs.
There are several concerns that restaurateurs have, and the first one is sort of just the logistical issue that, you know, sometimes it sounds too good to be true. You know, if you have 10 wings brands and everyone starts ordering wings from you, you can't actually keep up. You have to hire more people, it becomes more expensive. Maybe your main operation could suffer, your sort of in-house dining when you're trying to fill all these delivery orders. And then the other is this sort of larger strategic fear, which is that in the same way that Amazon competes with some of the sellers on its marketplace by finding what's popular and then making its own version at lower costs, that the big delivery apps will start making their own virtual brands like this, or promoting restaurants that pay higher fees and host one of their sort of company-produced virtual brands. Right now, the collaboration has been increasing between the brand companies and the apps. It hasn't quite reached that level yet, but you have Grubhub promoting virtual brand companies, trying to recruit restaurant owners, and so restaurant owners who are more skeptical of the delivery apps are kind of watching that warily.
In the end, you know, the kind of food for thought on the future of all of this, you mentioned in the article at the end, is very interesting, and I think is true for right now. You know, we had been seeing this trend of farm-to-table, locally sourced ingredients, keeping it, you know, very chef-centric even. And now things with the delivery apps have kind of changed that. As I mentioned, you don't know who you're ordering from, just that you're getting wings and you're getting these flavors and stuff, or the same thing for burgers or anything. So the trends of these restaurants are changing in this digital world, which is interesting to think about.
I think it really raises some questions about what a restaurant is or will be. You know, it feels a lot more like e-commerce, where you don't exactly know where it was made or where it came from. What you care about is how quickly it will get there and the price. And so you end up with these situations where you order wings and they're well reviewed and they'll get there fast, but maybe it's a brand name that was invented by some company in Silicon Valley, and it's being run out of a local restaurant that's also running 10 different brands in addition to its local, to its main, you know, dining business. You don't really know where it came from.
Josh Jezza, investigations editor at The Verge, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. You can catch a fresh episode of the podcast every morning, Monday through Friday on iHeartRadio. You can also follow us on social media at Daily Dive Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. Stay tuned for the Jesus Christ Show next, but first, into the newsroom. This is Kfi Am 640, more stimulating talk.
What you need to know and when you need to know it.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Reopening, I'm Layla Muhammad, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. The Los Angeles Catholic Archdiocese is fully reopening. Archbishop Jose Gomez says parishioners are being encouraged to attend Mass in person next weekend. Masks will not be required for those who are fully vaccinated, but those who are unvaccinated are being encouraged to always wear masks whenever social distancing is not possible. Nearly 30 swimming pools in the city of LA are reopening just in time for a heat wave. Officials with the Department of Recreation and Parks say the pools will have weekend hours from June 14th to the 20th. The pools will also offer swim lessons, aquatic sports, and a junior lifeguard program. Some COVID-19 protocols will be in place. Southland fire officials are getting ready to unveil a new plan to help fight wildfires.
The 180-day Quick Reaction Force program goes into effect Tuesday. Fire officials say the program will be paid for in part with $18 million from Southern California Edison. It'll include air resources which are pre-assembled and ready to take off from LA, Orange, and Ventura counties. Fire officials are predicting fire danger will be extremely high this summer because of the drought. Acres burned in California so far this year are up 58% over 2020, which was a record-setting year for wildfires in the state. Amy King, KFI News.
Police in Austin, Texas have arrested one of two men allegedly responsible for a shooting in downtown where 14 people were killed. Edgar Ortiz is in Austin for work and heard the shooting yesterday.
We were in line to enter the bar, and we were up next, and that's when I heard all the shots. Boom, 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 boom.
The shooting happened in Austin's entertainment district. Former President Trump held a rally in Wisconsin where he took credit for putting more Republicans in Congress.
And it wasn't for me. Right now, the Senate would be 60-40 against.
Trump also blamed Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell for losing 2 seats in Georgia. Trump said the 2020 election was totally rigged. Vice President Harris is the first VP to march in a Pride event. Reporter Jim Forbes says Harris participated in the parade in D.C. yesterday.
Vice President Kamala Harris participated in Saturday's Capitol Pride March in Washington, D.C. Harris wore a Love is Love shirt and advocated for the passage of the Equality Act while speaking at the event. As of March, there's a reported 192 anti-LGBTQ bills under consideration in states across the country.
Harris was joined by her husband. Well, someone has paid $28 million for a ride into space. That person would join Amazon's Jeff Bezos and his brother aboard a Blue Origin ship on July 20th. The auction for the ride took place yesterday. From the Southern California Toyota Dealers Traffic Center, we make it easy. A closure on the 405. This is in Fountain Valley.
It's going to be on the northbound side of the 405 for Brookhurst to Water. They have all lanes shut down there for road work. That's going to wrap up at 8:30 a.m. In the San Dimas area, 210 westbound at San Dimas Avenue, crash there along the right shoulder. And we have a closure of Sylmar on the 210 eastbound between the 5 and Roxford Street. They have all lanes coned off there until 5 a.m. Monday. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Jonathan Weiss.
It's about to heat up outside. Next.
It was a beautiful June morning in Southern California.
Birds were chirping, the sun was shining.
And somewhere on a quiet residential street, a sink was clogging.
The couple experiencing the clog,
Mr. and Mrs. JP,
did something they had never done before. They called the Smell Good plumbers at Mike Diamond.
I'm Mike Diamond. I guarantee my plumbers will show up on time and unclog your sink for $99.
A technician showed up promptly and unclogged the sink.
A few months later, a much more intensive problem turned up in the bathroom.
Mr. JP called Mike Diamond again. They worked up a plan and the repair was made.
Mr. and Mrs. JP felt good enough about the experience to sit down and write us an email.
They commended the Smell Good plumbers on their service and closed by saying they would use Mike Diamond on future services and recommend them to anyone in need of plumbing repairs.
We love Mr. and Mrs. JP, and we'd love for you to read their testimonial and more before calling your next plumber. The address is MikeDiamond.com, or just call us at 1-800-446-MIKE. Contractor's license number 399170.
Hey, it's Gary Hoffman. Let's talk about your Medicare coverage. Are you new to Medicare? Scan Health Plan is here to help. With Scan, you get comprehensive coverage plus extra benefits that may surprise you, all with exceptional service you won't find anywhere else. Call Scan at 1-855-370-7226, TTY711, or ask your agent about Scan. Scan Health Plan is an HMO plan with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in Scan Health Plan depends on contract renewal.
Masks don't slow us down. They keep us moving. From the corner store to the coffee shop. On your bike. Or on the playground. Keep wearing a snug-fitting mask with multiple cloth layers. Together, we can end this pandemic. Visit covid19.ca.gov today to learn more. Brought to you by the Center at Sierra Health Foundation.
Do you hear My Computer Career ads and think, I don't know anything about computers? Well, you don't have to. Before starting, many graduates could turn a computer on and off. And that's it. Now they're IT pros. You could do it too. Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. You could start your new life in as little as 4 months. Grants covering up to 53% of the cost are available to those who qualify. It's not rocket science. It's My Computer Career.
Veteran news anchor Ron Burgundy returns with the Ron Burgundy Podcast to take on the most pressing and exciting topics of our day. Get the truth about the stories that affect your life, as only Ron Burgundy can deliver it.
I've heard it said, perhaps by me, that you can earn a degree listening to my podcast. That's what I heard from my source. My source, that is, perchance, myself.
Listen to the Ron Burgundy Podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
1-877 Cards for Kids. KARS Cards for Kids.
Donate your car to
today with 1-877 Cars for Kids. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. Also on the web at carsforkids.com.
1-877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Now accepting donations of land, homes, buildings, or any kind of real estate.
Southland weather from KFI. We have some 70s, 80s, and 90s in your forecast for this Sunday. Mostly sunny with highs in the low 80s for the LA Basin and Inland OC, upper 80s for the valleys, 90s in the Inland Empire and the High Desert, low 70s for the coast, and some 80s for the mountains. Right now, 60 in Santa Ana, 59 in San Clemente, 64 in Corona, and 61 in Long Beach. We lead local, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Layla Muhammad.
The following is a pre-recorded program. Over 2,000 years ago, I walked this earth. Teaching, healing, inspiring, and preparing to meet the ultimate sacrifice. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. What if today you and I could talk, voice to voice, and you could ask me anything? You are listening to the Jesus Christ Show. Your Holy House. Happy to be with you this Sunday, as I'm with you every single Sunday, talking about the things that matter in life, and of course the afterlife. I encourage you to be bold and brave, and go to the phone with your theology question or life situation question. Anywhere in the U.S. of A, dial 800-520-1534. That's 800-520-1534. I've often heard people argue